So street choirs are political choirs, a form of cultural activism, which is strategic creativity, this is a dictionary definition of course, strategic creativity expressed in fine and public art, in theatre, carnival, music and singing. Political choirs predate, as we've already seen in presentations this morning, political choirs significantly predate this festival history, however. Birmingham Clarion Singers, for example, in our network, was established in 1940, following their founders' experience in the Spanish Civil War on the Republican side. And since then they've had patrons as esteemed as Paul Robeson, who they sang for and with in Birmingham. So the street choir movement in the UK has a long-standing strong connection with socialist and social justice traditions. Some choirs were born out of the Workers' Education Association evening classes, some choirs were born out of the Communist Party, etc., etc. Street choirs today also coalesce, in our network, also coalesce around feminism, the peace and anti-nuclear movements, and more recently perhaps environmentalism and LGBTQ activism. It was interesting when the latest manifestation of a social movement hit the streets, Extinction Rebellion, which have been in the news a lot. They arrived complete with their own anthem and a networked choir, which many campaign choir network members sing in when they come together for demonstrations. Yeah. This is Sheffield's Out Aloud, the LGBT choir celebrating their 10th anniversary in 2016, very smartly turned out. Not all street choirs sing on the street, by the way. Not all. Some street choirs never sing on the street, but a lot of us do. So that street, they do sing on the street. They're not always dressed like that. That's fine. So the street really signifies the political, rather than always the space. Although the space is quite important in what I'm talking about today. So people sing in street choirs for many reasons. They sing to please themselves, all that health benefit stuff that we're quite aware of from the literature, mental health benefits, physical health benefits. They sing to be part of community, and this is perhaps even more strong when it's a political community of some sort, i.e. when those choristers have common cause. They sing to entertain audiences, or at least we hope so, and they sing to tell stories, and there's a temporal element to this. I think they're telling stories, keeping histories alive, in songs like the Diggers song and Rosa Parks, many songs that keep alive those histories of struggle. They sing to impart facts, I think, about the political present. There's a boycott song about boycotting Israeli goods, which features the barcode number, which is 729, by the way. And so choirs sing to impart that sort of real campaign information about current struggles. They also seem to tell stories of the future, less so perhaps, and that was one of the things we picked up in our research, is that maybe we don't sing enough songs about utopian futures and giving people hope. So there are some. There's street choirs aren't just singing other people's songs, by the way. Lots of street choir people are writing songs, and there's one called 7 Generations Hence, which is a sort of environmental song about thinking about our actions 7 generations hence. Our research, our big question, I'll come to in a minute how we started our research, but our big question was how could the Campaign Choirs Network develop its radical potential in ways that took into account the everyday realities, competencies, hopes and dreams of its members. And today the bit I'm concentrating on of our research is this sub-question of how street choirs can pursue the emotional connections that they make with audiences to facilitate deliberation on matters of public concern, a posh way of saying politics again. So how they can make their singing political and engage with audiences. Our Campaign Choirs Network, as of May 2019, the Campaign Choirs Network has 136 email subscribers, which represents 61 street choirs, of which 45 are affiliated to the network. I know it's a bit complicated, but there are a lot of street choirs in Britain, from Scotland to Brighton and from Aberystwyth to this side of the country. And I think it's part of politics and music that's been a bit ignored by academia. And we interviewed 42 members of 11 choirs, 32 women, 10 men, and in that, I think, even in that sample, 32 women and 10 men, men were slightly overrepresented. There's a real shortage of men in street choirs. I'm often alone in my choir. I mean, gender-wise. Oh no, that's a mental health thing. And our interviewees ranged from 31 to 82, but people, this is the takeaway from a lot of statistics, people between 50 and 70 make up more than 70% of our sample. So we didn't gather data on ethnicity, but we can observe, this is a choir singing in Bury at the Street Christ Festival, and actually the picture is quite representative of the demographic we think exists. So we're mainly a white movement, mainly white social movement, and we're mainly old. We're quite an aging social movement, and that was the spur. Speak for myself. That was actually the spur for our research. Before we phrased it as a posh research question to gather funds and so on, it was actually street choirs saying to us, how can we get more young people? How can we diversify ethnically? How can we get more men? Actually, they don't care about men; they just want basses. So it's not. Yeah. So to address our sub-question, a little bit of theory that we drew on was Hannah Arendt's theory of action to analyse what street choirs do and what they could do. And in this instance, we're not so interested in when street choirs perform to like-minded audiences, perhaps keeping alive memories of past struggles, nor are we interested in singing as an act of disconnection, e.g. when street choirs sing against an English Defence League demonstration, for example. And we're not even interested in direct actions. Like just last week, there were pop-up choirs all over Britain singing about trying to boycott Israel's participation in the Eurovision Song Contest, or Israel hosting it. What's interesting today is it here and now is catching the ear of the apathetic and antagonistic audience, and that thing of sparking emotions, and then, not just sparking emotions in our audience, then engaging them in discussion. And that's what defines Hannah Arendt's space of appearance. It's the space in which political participation takes place. And Hannah Arendt views that as an end in itself. So it's not about converting the people that you engage with. It's not about beating them down or getting consensus and agreement. The whole end is to deliberate politics with other citizens. Oh, now we can have a quote. I'll read this as well as you can read it. I don't like crude politics. I like songs that are inviting people in to do something somehow, that are giving them an idea about how they might resist or how they might change things. And also there's celebrational songs like Rosa's Lovely Daughters, which are saying, yes, you can resist, and yes, you can change things. I much prefer that to songs that are ridiculing anything, because they may be fun for a moment, but what they don't do is take people onto another idea, another way of doing things. Anger is really important because it does generate change, but it has to be directed into something beyond anger. Making people laugh is fine, but the best songs make people laugh and think. I think, well, that's from D. Coombs of Liverpool Socialist Singers. I think while it might be tempting to agree with D, I think if all our songs were in that same earnest register, doing all those jobs at once, our repertoire would be a bit boring. We would, and I think that is an affliction that does get some if we're singing all very earnest anthems. So songs can connect an audience on many emotional levels and rationally. Songs can make you laugh, we know, songs can make you cry, songs can make you think. But in practice, on the street, music and lyrics are less separable than we may imagine. So it's likely to be the music that first connects with an audience. The lyrics often go unheard as people pass by. Sparking a musical memory can play a role in connecting with an audience. So using a familiar tune is a common strategy to engage an audience with unfamiliar lyrical sentiments. But as Dee again advised us, there's only so many times you can listen to things to the tune of Daisy, Daisy, which we sympathise with, having sung a lot of political songs to the tune of Daisy, Daisy. There's a benefit and a risk then to using a familiar tune. A hymn tune, for instance, may catch the ear, but make a very misleading emotional political connection. So that's difficult to develop, and we go on to the next stage, it's difficult to develop into political deliberation. The venerable Birmingham clarion singers who I mentioned before, performing as they do every year at the TUC Women Chainmakers Festival at Craigley Heath. This is 2017. Jeanette Bicknell, who writes and teaches on aesthetics and the philosophy of music, uses the term art without a frame to describe how music can be perceived outside its appropriate social context. So, For instance, in 2007, virtuoso Joshua Bell, dressed in casual clothes, played some great musical works on a Stradivarius violin outside a train station in New York. Of 1,000 passers-by, how many do you think stopped to listen for at least 1 minute?
One.
How many?
30.
3.
30.
Any maths
15.
on 3? 5? 5?
69.
No! 7. So you're in you were all aware enough as street musicians to know it wouldn't. So 7 people stopped to listen to at least 1 minute. 27 people flipped Bell a coin, and he made $32 in 43 minutes. This is among New Yorkers who would probably pay hundreds of dollars to see the guy on stage in his appropriate social context. So street choirs are out of place. They're away from where you expect to see choirs in the concert hall or in the church, particularly in the British tradition. And on this account alone, they could be expected to struggle to gain an audience's attention, let alone engage them in political deliberation. And political deliberation itself, in our day and age, in Britain at least, would also be judged out of place in taking place in public space. That's disappeared from our public life a little bit, I think. Yes, please. So, oddly, one way that some street choirs have countered their out-of-placeness has been to further compound it. So, Cardiff's Cor Cochion, Red Choir, for example, often add theatre to their street performances. This is them at an anti-austerity demonstration during the Tory Party Congress in Manchester in 2017, obviously protesting about cuts to the NHS and austerity. So when choirs do this, it could be considered as doubly discomforting for an audience. They're putting themselves twice out of place. They're a choir and theatre, both taking place on the street. But Corcockian, for instance, play on that to make the space political participation. And I sort of rethought that a bit after the presentations I've seen in the last couple of days, that actually carnival and pantomime isn't so out of place on the street perhaps. So perhaps they're doing something else by doing that. Yeah, next thing. This is a quote from a member of Corcockian, Christopher Norris. We've encountered some opposition. I think you'd expect that too. When you're singing for Palestinian causes, for instance, you get all sorts of reactions. It's very difficult sometimes, actually on the street, when you get abusive comments from passers-by, to sort of keep your cool, marshal the facts, and come back with some sort of reasoned response, and just point out the illogicalities and falsehoods being peddled. There are some street choir members who are particularly good at keeping their cool, and just taking people aside and quietly explaining without getting worked up and agitated, and others who can't do it. I'm one of the ones who find it really difficult to keep my cool. And I'm with Chris on that. Yeah. So like many other street choirs, Corcockian most often do have information on the issue they're singing about that they can share with people and take out. So yes, next please. So to conclude, our argument is that if street choirs wish to create space for political participation, they should be prepared to actively pursue the emotional connections that they make with audiences, to provide information and engage in deliberation on matters of public concern. In other words, to make protest singing an act of radical democratic citizenship, you have to stick around and take responsibility. Just one little afterthought, having put all this together. Join in the hands of very bitter political rivals Michael Manley and Edward Seaga in Jamaica during conflict that almost amounted to war in Jamaica in 1978. You can see how pleased they are about it. But I had that thought that it's maybe another role for music that's a bit unexplored, that after we have engaged audiences, caught their ear with music, and then actually talk to them about issues, then there's a sort of vacuum then when we all disappear. We're still adversaries, we still disagree, and then we disappear. And there could be an additional role for music if we could sing the song together to end the political deliberations. That might be interesting.